Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Mentera Care Chat. My name is Natasha Bowman, the Mentera Global Brand Ambassador, and I'll be your host for the next 30 minutes. During each Care Chat, you'll learn specific tools and tips to implement in your organization to support the mental health in the workplace. And as we begin our discussion today, you'll notice that there is a chat box on the lower portion of your screen. So if you have any questions, please type those in the box and we'll try to get to them at the end of our time today. But I'm so excited. Before we get started with our guest, I like to welcome Lyra Health as our Care Chat sponsor. Lyra Health helps leading companies improve access to effective, high-quality mental health care for their employees and their families. With their innovative digital care platform and elite provider network, members receive the best care and feel better faster. So Lyra has raised more than $900 million and works with large employers such as Morgan Stanley, Uber, Amgen, Zoom, and other Fortune 500 companies to deliver care to their employees and families globally. So thank you. Now, today, we're going to be discussing the topic of building a culture of trust and privacy. And our expert guest speaker is Sheila Krueger, formerly head of global benefits at Zoom. So excited for her to join me. Sheila is the people and things. Sheila snuck in the back door of HR through a secret IT passage. Can't wait to hear about that. And after implementing an HRIS system for an HR team, she just refused to leave HR. So thus, she started her career that is encompassed in HRIS, compensation, benefits, wellness, communication, M&A, and many other aspects of the people experience life. So to kick things off, let's get started with a brief introduction. Sheila, welcome to today's Mentera Care Chat. So glad to have you. Thank you. And I know I gave a little bit of tiny information about you, but I would love for you to share more about yourself and your work.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so happy to be here, Natasha, and get the time to spend with you. I think the real true IT passageway story is very true. I was working for a credit union, and I was on the R&D team, part of IT. And literally went through the RFP process with them, spent about a year going through and getting their HRIS up and running. And they didn't really have anybody to run it if I left. So I didn't. And eventually I just started sucking in all the knowledge from the HR team and was able to really kind of kickstart my HR career from there into comp and benefits. And that's where I've spent the majority of my time ever since then. So it's been a really fantastic ride. Truly love the space. The total reward space is really amazing. So.
What a wonderful story. And entering into HR, that's a question that I get often, like, how do I get started? How do I get in there? So for all your listeners that want to get there, here's a way in through IT. So thank you so much for sharing that. And just hearing, that you have spent the majority of your career in benefits and comp, and I'm sure that benefits, right, throughout your career has also consisted of mental health benefits, right? And when people have wanted to come to you in the past to express, hey, what resources do we have as an organization for our mental health or other illnesses as well that are historically stigmatized, right? How have you helped them, feel protected to express this vulnerability and to trust you, to trust the organization, to, offer them those resources and support that they've needed?
Yeah, and it's certainly a lot different now than it was 20 or 30 years ago, because there's a
Yes.
lot more privacy laws, for one thing, that help us to protect our employees and ourselves if we're the ones that need the help, right? So, whereas 30 years ago, there wasn't much of that. So if you went and told somebody in HR something, you probably had a pretty good chance of it getting around the whole place. But I think definitely in the last 10 years, 10 to 15 years, especially, the HIPAA laws, the security and privacy laws have really tightened up, and the HR team has absolutely put their toes on that line to say, hey, listen, the information stops here. So I think it's really about, on a personal level, reassuring somebody that whatever they're going to tell you is not going to leave the room. And then also making sure that if you are engaging with third-party participants to help with mental health, that you are also sure that those folks will be keeping those same things. So all the security and IT privacy, the HIPAA things, the business associate agreements, all of those things are really important. So you can point those out to your employees to reassure them that their information is confidential.
Yes. And I know from my experience, and I've been in the game over 20 years, not quite 30 yet, but approaching that. And you're right, things have, there have been significant laws that have been passed to protect the privacy. But sometimes I think that managers have interpreted those laws to think, well, I can't interact with my employees at all. And what's your thoughts about that, engaging in these conversations while ensuring that privacy and confidentiality?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I do think that's, HR's role here is to make sure that the managers have a good understanding of how to deal with. Certainly one of the things that's very important, but I think most even just is where you can work with managers to teach them how to engage with employees who maybe are having issues and talk to them about that, even to the point where you may get a script for a manager, so they have very specific things that they can go through, but certainly also educating them about what not to say. For example, I don't want to hear about it because that's your business, not mine. No, it really is. It's your business because that person's in your workplace. They're in your bubble every day and they're helping you to achieve your company's goals. So you want to make sure that they are balanced and well ready to take on the day. So I think it's really important to do that member or that manager education.
Yes, exactly. And I love that we used to separate it, right? Like, we don't want to know about your personal life, et cetera, et cetera. But we can't avoid that. We spend more time with our workplaces, our managers, than we do at home. And there's definitely the intersectionality, of the two. And so that response of, well, that's your business, not mine, is just no longer acceptable, in the workplace. So yeah, engaging in that and training managers how, like you said, to engage in these conversations, the do's and the don'ts, I think is a great way to help to move these conversations forward. I read an article recently that managers have a bigger impact on mental health than even a mental health provider or spouse. So it's so important that managers build this trust, right, with their workforce so that they can go into this so they can engage with them.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. So I've spoken to you before, and you brought up something that was just so compelling to me, which are the 5 pillars of wellness. And you've got to share with our audience today what those pillars are. How did you come up with them? Just more about that. I'm sure that our audience is going to be just as intrigued as I was about the 5 pillars of wellness.
Absolutely. I think over the years, not only has benefits changed and how people approach it, but also to me, it's not really about just benefits. When people think of benefits, they think of medical, dental, vision, maybe some mental health care, right? But it really is so much more than that. So my goal in the last years of my career has been to really not create a benefits plan, but create a wellness program. And that's going to be based on your medical, dental, vision plan, obviously. But it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Everybody needs medical, dental, vision, and the rest is very flexible. But really, the 5 pillars are the physical wellness. So that's kind of your base of the pillar of the pyramid. Mental health, mental wellness, financial wellness, and I could talk about financial wellness and mental health and how they coexist for a long time. Social, the social platform, and then your community. So social is kind of how you build your people. And the people that are your support system personally. And then community is really about how you interact with the rest of the world. So how are you doing volunteer work that helps a community or a program, just really how you interact with the world and how you make a contribution to the community. So those 5 pillars of wellness to me are what should be making up the bulk of your wellness plan.
Yes. And that last one, being able to be a part of the community. I have not heard many organizations, really focus on how important it is to their employees' wellness, overall well-being when they are connected to their community. So what are some examples that you've been able to give your leaders on how they can make that, that connection? I want to hear more about that because I think that is so, so important. And, when we think about that, my employer is giving me time, to connect with my community, that shows that true engagement. You care about me. I'm going to build that trust in you. So what are some examples that organizations have done to encourage that connection?
Yep. And I think there's a lot of ways to do that. Some require financing and some don't, but the very simple one is to give people time off to volunteer for the projects that they really believe in. That is super important. And if you've got a budget and you can build on that, you can donate to their organizations in exchange for their volunteer time, which is another really popular way to get folks engaged in the community. You can even do that with challenges within maybe a geographical areas of your company, pit Paris versus, London, and tell them whoever raises the most money or volunteers the most hours, maybe they get a party at their workplace, something like that. It doesn't have to cost a lot. And then all the way up to, matching donations. Either through a platform or somehow, so that if somebody is giving of their resources, whether it's volunteer time or money, that the company is matching that to help out. And then a lot of companies also have a social relations committee who will work on, corporate donations as well. And then you can back that up with funneling your employees into that particular charity or program to help out with volunteer hours as well.
Okay, wonderful. And I have been a part of organizations that have done things like that. And I remember there was so much incitement and engagement, especially if there's a competition involved, and it gave you time to really not just connect with the community, but connect with each other, right? It just really brings everything together. So that's, such a wonderful thing. But I just don't think even when I was in those organizations that offered it, that they connected it to well-being. So that's what I love about that, is that you're making that connection. Because when you told me about it, I'm like, oh, wow, you're right. That did contribute to my overall well-being, right? And so, so that's so good to connect that. So with this robust plan, with the 5 pillars of wellness, I'm sure we've got so many people that are interested. How can employers begin to work towards building a robust set of offerings like this?
Yeah. So again, flexibility is really the key, I think, to that. So working with your broker, working with your TPA if you're self-funded, your pharmacy benefit manager if that's a carve out for you, and looking at those myriad of point solutions that are available for people. And if we just focus, even quickly on mental health, our sponsor Lyra, for example, one of those bringing one of those kinds of programs into your company can be very helpful.
Yep.
There are now there's a program now that's referred to mostly as lifestyle spending accounts, which are really an amazing flexibility tool that people can use to pick and choose those point solutions offered by their employer to build the plan that really supports them the most. So that may be that they select a mental health provider, and maybe they select a financial wellness provider that can help them be the whole person that they want to be. And that may be very different from somebody down the road who wants to have retirement planning and maybe long-term care insurance or something like that to build their safety net for them when they retire. So flexibility, I think, really, Natasha, is a huge key to how we can provide this for people, because you and I are very similar in a lot of things, but my guess is that if we sat down and talked about what we need to support us in wellness, very different. And that's absolutely true across the board everywhere.
I love it. Just not that cookie cutter approach. What do you need at this moment that may change from year to year? And I love that. I think that's something that most organizations can benefit from doing, is having multiple offerings for that lifestyle, like you said, that really ensures that, hey, you're an individual, and it acknowledges that, and what your overall well-being looks like is going to be different from your neighbor. So absolutely love that. So in our previous conversations, I've learned that you've done very well at crafting communication plans to announce mental health benefits and encourage people to seek out resources. Can you tell us more about that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, mental health providers have been around for a really long time, but we haven't always wanted to talk about mental health, not as an employer, maybe not as an employee. There's a lot of people, there's still a lot of stigma associated with that. And I do believe even more so outside of the US. I think in the US, we're kind of getting over the hump of that being really something that's got a lot of stigma to it, which is amazing. So for me, the communication piece was a lot about using your C-suite folks, having that come down from the top, like, here's something we're providing to you, talking about trying to be very personal with people and connect with them on a human basis about the need for this kind of service. And then tailoring that to the different areas that you're in. So, for example, in some countries where mental health maybe is still very highly stigmatized, you might not come out and just say, hey, we've got this mental health program for you. It's more like, hey, we've got a place where you can go and talk to somebody if you've got an issue, or it's coaching, or it's something besides therapy. So just the ability to do that. And I think the other thing is that, that mental health isn't just for the employee. Typically the EAP will cover the family as well. And a lot of times we're going to see that a good percentage of the reason that people contact a mental health provider is because of relationships. And so I can't work on just me if I'm having a relationship problem. That's something that needs to be worked on together. So also getting out the word to the family that they have these things available to them. So we had partnered at Zoom previously. We partnered with our mental health provider, and we actually sent out a magnet for their kitchen refrigerator that talked about, hey, if you need somebody to talk to, here's the number you can call, or here's the website you can use. It's totally free. Everybody in this household can use it, and really made that available so that there was a literally sticky reminder for everybody in the family to take advantage.
Oh, I love that. And I mean, that's so good. And again, I think that you're right. Relationships are such a big issue, and, in terms of how we bring ourselves to work. So not just, ensuring the well-being of your workforce, but the support system around your workforce, right, is so crucial. So when you've done those things, those are exciting things. What was the response from employees, and how did you measure, your communication and make sure that people were taking advantage of these resources?
Yeah. Well, I think anytime that you've got a vendor that you're working with, you're obviously going to rely a lot on their analytics to see how things are going. And you can see as you're communicating, increases and spikes in engagement with that particular vendor. And certainly that's what we relied on quite a bit. We had changed over our vendor right before COVID hit. And so we got a huge spike. Obviously, I mean, that was kind of a natural, I think, but continued to build on that throughout COVID and continuing on with the constant communication and, putting webinars and learning opportunities in front of the employees on a regular basis. Giving them, there's a page on the intranet where they can always go and see what their resources are. Certainly at Zoom, we integrated with our safety team, our physical safety team, so that if there was an event anywhere worldwide, they all got a personal email from the team that said, hey, here's where you can go. If you're stressed out or you need somebody to talk to, here you can do this. So really integrating all that into the business rather than just having that be an HR issue. It's like there's other parts of your organization that can help you negotiate through those communications and really provide them to people at a time where it's very appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's so good. You've talked to us about, all of your experience of your vast, 30 years within this field. What would you share with us, especially as it relates to mental well-being, your 5 pillars of wellness, how you communicate, how you measure? What have you learned from these experiences, and what is there anything that you would do differently in the future? I know we talked about a couple of things, such as we typically are told managers that said don't engage in these discussions. But what are some things, if you think about the future of well-being, especially mental well-being, what advice would you give for up and coming people that's going to sit in the seats that you've sat in to ensure that they are supporting the mental health and overall well-being of their workforce?
Yeah, I really do believe, Natasha, that working with your executive level folks is really important. You want to have their support. They can be, their outward appearance of participating in the process is worth, way more than probably anything the vendor can help you roll out as far as communications. So, for example, during COVID, I was at Zoom during COVID, very, very busy, super crazy times, triple the staff. Everybody was just Mach 2 with their hair on fire all the time. And so there was a long period of time when I never saw an out of office for anybody going on vacation. And finally it really reached critical mass, and it was like, we need these people to take a break. One of our sales leaders actually brought it up at an all hands meeting and said, hey, I'm going on vacation next week. I'm completely disconnecting. I won't be listening to my emails. I won't be looking at emails. I won't be listening to voicemails. I'm out. And, that really was an offer for him to be open about the need for the break, as well as encouraging all of those other folks to take them. Yep. And the CEO did it later in the year. Again, said, listen, I'm off next week. I'm gone. I am out. And just those kinds of examples are really important. So you really need the support of your senior leadership team and their willingness to, be public and be open about the time that they take and just help model whatever it is that you're trying to help your employees do.
Absolutely. And that goes back to that vulnerability piece. When we see senior leaders within the organization being vulnerable to say, hey, I need a break, I'm not going to be checking emails, then that models right for other people and tells them it's okay to take time off. So absolutely. Love it. So before we wrap up, I love to open the floor to our audience for questions that they may have. And remember, we have this chat box at our bottom screen. And I think, Sheila, I've already seen some come through. So let's go through some of these great ones that I see here. And the first one is, what do you do when HIPAA is violated in the workplace? They've had experience and witnessed this so many times. And I'm sure a lot of times that people don't know they're violating it because there's not really a law or regulation that we talk about a lot and do a lot of training around. So how would you advise if you're a manager, avoiding violating HIPAA, or if you are an individual contributor and you believe your HIPAA rights have been violated? What's your advice on that?
Yeah, I think from an employer perspective, it's really important to make sure that you've got a HIPAA program. And if that's not part of your business, you need to make sure it's part of your HR practices, so that you've got a HIPAA privacy officer somewhere in HR, so that everybody in the company has somebody to report to if there is a violation. Yeah. The other thing is then part of that program is laying out what the steps are for any violation, because, there are monetary penalties for this, and we don't want anybody to incur those at their company. So not to mention the embarrassment for the employee whose HIPAA rights have been violated. So setting up the program is really the first key. You can't just, because somebody violated HIPAA, say, oh, all right, you're fired, because you have no program, you have no policy. So really important to get that set up and do that, and then follow, the policy that you've come up with and follow it. Yep. Don't make exceptions. You really need to follow it.
Exactly. And then going back to what you were saying earlier, communicate it, train on it.
Yeah.
Ensure it's what it is. I think a lot of times we throw things in the handbook or role policy out, but we don't really do a good job in our roles sometimes on some of these things at really explaining what this means, giving scenarios like, oh, why does she get to work from home 5 days a week? I only get 3. Oh, because she has a workplace accommodator, and you say it inadvertently, but it's a violation. Right. So giving those examples. Yeah. So then we have some curiosity when we talked about communicating and measuring your plans about the free magnet. How have you worked with your benefits providers such as Lyra? And we're going to talk about your experience with them in getting that free magnet.
Yeah. So when you're working with a vendor, maybe you can negotiate it for free. Ours was not free. We paid for that magnet to be sent out. We designed it with our provider, and they sent it out for us. And obviously we paid for that, but that was really for us a really important investment in the well-being of our employees and their families.
Okay, great. So I love that. Design it. Let's work together. You know your workforce better than them and what they'll respond to. So so I know that's essential. And then last but certainly not least, we'd love to hear about Zoom's experience using Lyra Health.
Oh, absolutely. Well, like I said, we implemented right before the pandemic. The CPO at the time and I, come about April, said, man, were we intelligent human beings for having done that. Really, really made the switch because we needed something more robust than a legendary or an EAP that was, around forever. The engagement in those EAPs is typically very low. It's very difficult to get an appointment. You usually get a list of providers, and you'll call the 10 that are on the list, and maybe only one is even taking new patients. And if they are, you're going to get an appointment 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now. When you're in a mental health crisis, that's not going to work for you. Nope. And so what we really liked about the Lyra model was they would give you a curated list of their providers who are typically their employees. There are some who are on contract, but a lot of them are employees of Lyra who are doing this full-time only for Lyra. So there's availability and appointments. You only get a list of people who have appointments available. In some cases, you can actually schedule them as you're going through your evaluation. And if you are really in an extreme mental health crisis, they guarantee that someone will be back with you within 2 hours. And so you will have somebody to talk with you And certainly in the interim, they're going to give you other resources like the 988 suicide hotline or a crisis line to help you in the interim until they can get back to you. So very, very important. And I think the best thing about the whole experience with Lyra was just the communication that we had between them and us. Like I mentioned, the reporting, very robust, which was amazing. So we knew why people were looking for help. Which kind of helped us drive what we were doing internally. Like, is there something here that's work related that we might need to look at? Those kinds of things. And then the other thing was really robust group sessions that they call gatherings that are targeted towards what I would probably normally think of as employee resource groups. So that's another part of that community that we talked about is if you've got a community of LGBTQ or BIPOC or, Asia Pacific Islanders, all of those things really, really important. And to have that group of folks around you that are like you. And Lyra does a really great job of providing quite a few opportunities every month for people to join into a group session that is not recorded. It is not, we don't get reporting back as an employer of who attended. It's truly kind of an anonymous group session. So, in the last couple of years, there were a lot of sessions for BIPOC folks about, living in these times and how to deal with all of the racist behavior that's been going on. Same with the AAPI groups. I mean, just some really amazing group sessions that have been very, very well attended and very robust. And you're doing a great job when the people don't, you're not getting a report from Lyra, but the people are telling you, thank you so much for providing this because it's very helpful. Yeah.
That is so unique. And I've been in your seat for many years before going out on my own. And I can tell you that was not available, and even close to recent years. So what a great offering by Lyra. And it's not, like you said, just having that sense of community. That's just one of its kind. So glad that you were able to offer that to your workforce and they took full advantage of that. And we're thankful for it, right? Going back to that, how you measure success, sometimes getting that thank you for having this was enough for me. So good. So Sheila, it has been such a pleasure speaking with you and our audience. Thank you for your questions today. And I hope that everyone found this Care Chat to be informative and helpful, and that you will join us for additional free educational opportunities. Only thing you got to do is go to www.joinmentera.com. We will send you. We have this Care Chat monthly, and there's other free resources. So we thank you. Again, thank you to our expert speaker, Sheila Krueger, and to all of our attendees, and to our sponsor, Lyra Health, for sponsoring this conversation and for what you're doing to promote and protect the well-being of our workforce today. Until next time, have a great rest of the month, everyone.